Tonight, Green Lantern ends its event by killing off one of the main Earth Lanterns. Definitely forever and not brought back immediately. Action Comics and Teen Titans provide a 1-2 punch of the stupidest thing you'll read all year. And Forever Evil A.R.G.U.S asks the question that nobody's ever asked before: I wonder what's going on with Steve Trevor. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 113 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I made a mistake. I know, it's hard to believe. I'm just so perfect and everything else, but I, if you will indulge me here, do have to do some explaining. So way back in episode 35 of this show, I began talking about The Culling, which involved and was in fact launched by Teen Titans Annual number 1. And in that episode, I lamented the fact that DC did not include Teen Titans Annual number 1 in any of the Teen Titans trade. No, if you wanted this book, you had to either buy it individually, as I did, or you had to buy the story arc trade of The Culling, which there was no way in hell I was ever going to do that. And in my research for making sure that I had the entire New 52 in trades, I noted that one and said, okay, I will buy that one separately. And that was seemingly the only issue, barring a few that we'll get to much, much later on in DC's lifespan here, that had that problem. I was wrong. See, when I bought Action Comics volume number 4 here, I read the back of it, or at least I read it off Amazon at the time, and it said it included issues 19 to 24, a story from Young Romance number 1, and Superman Annual number 2. Now, you might have just caught that right there. It includes, in the Action Comics book, Superman Annual number 2, not Action Comics Annual number 2. Well, when I was making my list of all of the books that were a part of the New 52, I accidentally just marked this as containing Action Comics Annual number 2. Alas, it does not, and even more alas, none of the trades that are put out for Action Comics contain Annual number 2, because it also is the launching point for the event Krypton Returns, which means that it was only ever available in the trade of Krypton Returns, which I did not buy because I didn't think I needed it. So, long story made only slightly shorter here, I don't have that book. I have no physical media containing that book presently. I do have the digital version because I subscribe to DC Infinite for this show. Makes my reading a lot easier on the go. But in terms of reading physical books on this show, I don't have that one available. I do have it ordered on eBay already, and it will arrive in 3 days' time, but I can't wait to put out this episode, so yeah, I done goofed. All of that to say, for the audio listeners, you will notice absolutely nothing different, but for the video people, I will have a laptop in front of me for the very first time, because I'm already ashamed enough. You don't have to rub it in. So yeah, that's that going on. Regardless, there's a bunch of things, because it's a 5th week. I forgot to even say that up front. Dear Lord, what am I doing? It is a 5th week. We have a bunch of annuals coming out. We got a bunch of number 1s. And then I also have an issue when it comes to the backups, but I'll get to that when we get to the backups. So let me just tell you all the normal comics coming out. We have annual number 1s for Nightwing and Aquaman. And then we have annual number 2s for Action Comics, Green Lantern, Teen Titans, and Swamp Thing. And then we have brand new number 1s for Forever Evil A.R.G.U.S and Damian, Son of Batman. So the only things I need to explain out of that are Action Comics, as I said, is the launching point for Krypton Returns. Green Lantern Annual number 2 is actually the final part of the Lights Out event, so that's happening there. Aquaman is dealing with the others, so whatever's going on with that. And then Forever Evil A.R.G.U.S is, of course, part of Forever Evil, but Damian, Son of Batman, that's one you may not know about because it's kind of debatable as to whether it's even part of the New 52. It is an Andy Kubert series that is written in the continuity of Batman number 666 and Batman 700, where Damian becomes Batman with his big collar and whatnot. We saw that in a flash forward in Batman Incorporated, I believe. So it's a whole series set in that timeline. Is it part of New 52? I don't know, but if I don't know, I'm doing it. So yeah, all that's happening today. It's going to be a shorter episode, but it's going to have a lot in it. So just work with me here. I'm really trying. Anyway, I don't know which comic we're going to be talking about first. Let's just roll into whatever I decided to choose first, which happens to be this one. Forever Evil Argus number 1, written by Sterling Gates, art by Philip Tan, Neil Edwards, and Javier Pina. So once again, another one of these spin-off series from Forever Evil, and this one is dealing seemingly with just what is Steve Trevor up to, and also the remains of Argus, but as we see soon enough, he is the remains of Argus. So somewhere we're seeing people looking at photos talking about, oh, what happened to Argus? What's Argus up to? And they're like, they're all gone. They're crippled. They can't do anything, at least most likely. And then this hand burns a photo of Argus saying, I don't want most likely. Tell me what's actually going on. Argus sucks. So cut to 6 years ago, and we get narration from Steve as he's flying into this storm, and he's saying, I don't trust people a lot, and that's kind of a problem in the military where you put your lives in other people's hands. And he's flying through the storm because some other plane went down nearby. And because it's 6 years ago, we all know what it is. He gets zapped by lightning in his jet, all of his controls go out, and then he crash lands on, wouldn't you know it, Themyscira. And as he lands there, dazed and confused, Wonder Woman comes over, rips off the cockpit, and he's just like, how's it going? So we then have Steve Trevor waking up now with adrenaline shot to his heart. Etta Candy is there, and he's just like, what's going on? Where are we at? And she says, we're at Argus HQ, we're in Washington, everything's kind of going sideways, but you need to stay down, you're very injured. And he's like, screw that, give me a gun, I'm ready to go. So he gets up, they walk around, there's a lot of debris and explosion and whatnot, and Etta explains that Dr. Light's body exploded, and this whole place has been completely leveled. Everybody that's left is everybody that's left. So Steve explains that he was with the Justice League when the Crime Syndicate arrived. The Justice League was knocked on their asses, and then Zatanna actually teleported Steve away at the instruction of Madame Xanadu, and then he just woke up here. So at that point, Etta's like, okay, so here's the thing. We have all of these tracking things for Argus agents, and you need to know that because of Argus and all of the other computers in the world basically getting hacked by Grid, as we'll come to know him, no one was safe. And all of our agents out in the field are basically being picked off one by one. They're all pretty much dead. And she shows some footage from them getting attacked by people like Hyena and Dr. Phosphorus and Hector Hammond. The A-listers like that. And he's like, okay, well, what do we know? Where's Director Waller? And she's like, well, I don't know where Waller never let us track her. She's just off doing whatever. She was in Belle Reve. That's all we know. And so he points out, like, okay, how many agents do we have left? And they said that she specifically says Dale Gunn, who you would know from the Justice League of America's Vibe series, he's still alive. But besides that, there's about 24 agents in this building, and that's it. That's all that's left of Argus. And then we see the stream of showing all these videos is hacked, and we see the Crime Syndicate is basically live streaming their announcement to the world saying this world is ours. And we see that Cheetah has a hold of Wonder Woman's lasso, and Steve is like, oh no, she wouldn't dare leave that lasso with Cheetah. So we cut back 5 years ago, and we see, Wonder Woman's become a ambassador, and Steve is acting as sort of an emissary between them and Paradise Island, and they're in a romantic relationship. But then all of a sudden Steve is pulled away by the President of the United States, and We cut back to modern day where he's basically trying to see what technology can work in Argus. Not a whole lot of it's there. And then all of a sudden they get this little radio signal thing saying, back up, White House, Deathstroke, president needs evacuating. And that's it. That's all they got. So then Steve's like, well, this is my job. I'm going to go save the president of the United States from Deathstroke. So then we cut back to 5 years ago, and Steve's talking with definitely Obama. They don't call him that, but he's Obama. And he basically says, all right, here's the thing. You were around during the Dark Side thing, and so was the Justice League. I don't trust the Justice League. They have no accountability, and they just came up out of nowhere. So I am going to make this new thing called A.R.G.U.S. I'm going to put you in charge. You're going to be the liaison between the U.S. government and Justice League. That's what A.R.G.U.S. theoretically is for. But in actuality, you're going to be researching the Justice League and finding out everything you can about them. That's your job now. So congratulations. So that's how A.R.G.U.S. came to be. We cut over to the White House sometime later, and Steve is leading what little men he can into the fray. They come across this woman who's screaming for help, and turns out it isn't just any woman, it's Shadow Thief. And Steve recognizes her almost a bit too late. We have Giganta's foot just comes in through the White House roof, almost kills Steve and his group. So they have a little bit of a fight between Shadow Thief and the Argus agents. Steve manages to get away for a minute, and he is immediately confronted by Deathstroke and I don't even know who this guy's, Copperhead. Because, yeah, A-listers, like I said. So at that point, Steve challenges Deathstroke, says, oh, I'll fight against you. And he's just like, oh, but the killing stroke is mine. And so it looks like Deathstroke's already got the upper hand on Steve. Meanwhile, back at Argus, some reason we show that Steve's gone flatlined. His biorhythm thing has gone off. So Etta's like, oh no, Steve's dead. But before she can even react, there's some big light that's showing up behind her. It explodes up, and a couple agents dive for cover. And we see the spirit of Dr. Light has reformed, and he's just screaming out at Etta, what have you done to me? And that's the issue. That's all that happens. It's okay. I'm not really sure on a lot of these spin-offs of Forever Evil as to what it is they're really trying to accomplish or why they have to be set at the Forever Evil time. This one, it kind of just seems more like a restructuring thing more than an actual story being told. I think that they decided, okay, we had our fun with Argus. We did our little stuff of, they're investigating the Justice League, but we did all that. We've reached the point where now we need to make it so when the Justice League comes back, we've got a different structure in place. And it seems like that's all this is going to be, is Steve Trevor's going to be at the head of that. As for what the 6 issues are, got me. Maybe it's all just rescuing Obama. I doubt it, considering we're already in the White House, but something about Dr. Light's spirit is back. It's not showing its hand yet, but I'm sure that they've got a plan at the very least. Overall, I'd say this one is probably a 6. It's hard to say because so little actually happens in this issue. It's much more spent with just saying, hey, here's Steve Trevor of the New 52's backstory, just because we didn't really ever do that in any meaningful capacity. We showed like a couple of links, but for the most part, it's been kind of up in the air. So yeah, I'll say 6 for this. I'm not against it, but it's definitely clear this is not the A-tier book. There's a reason this one was pushed off to the 5th week. Green Lantern Annual Number 2, written by Robert Venditti, art by Chen. This is the final conclusion part of Lights Out. So last time we had the Red Lanterns decided, hey, we're going to get involved. We're going to help you guys out. Let's go take down Relic. Also, Kyle met with Relic and said, dude, we're on your side. We totally agree. So we open up here with basically them talking about the universe, saying, yeah, there's, the emotional spectrum, the light spectrum. It's what makes the universe go, and it's on the verge of running out, but Relic is willing to do whatever it takes to get it going again. And so we cut back to Yzmalt, where the Red Lanterns, led by Guy Gardner, is like, all right, let's do it. Let's go. Let's beat him up. And Hal decides right now is the time to say, actually, hold on. I do need to tell you, we lost the planet Oa, and John Stewart died as well. And Guy's like, are you kidding me? He was my partner, and you're just telling me this now? Oh, I'm going to strangle this relic guy. I'm going to kill him. Let's go find him. And Hal's like, we have no way of knowing where he is, as well as Kyle. They're both gone, although Kyle may know where he is. And that's when Carol decides to chime up, and she's like, I kind of know where Kyle is. And he's like, how? She's like, well, I have this pull towards him. And Hal's like, but you only do that with people you love. Son of a bitch, you love Kyle after all this? You said you wanted me to grow up, and now you're loving on Kyle? And she's like, can we do this at literally any other point when the universe is not about to end? And he's like, well, so she uses her Star Sapphire powers, sends out a tether, which points him in the direction of Kyle. And we cut over to the Source Wall, the border of the universe, where Relic is still doing tests, and everything that touches the Source Wall becomes part of the Source Wall. And he's like, all right, this is kind of frustrating. None of my probes are working, but maybe I can just use more light. Let me just use more light to try to bust through it. And the Guardians and Kyle are all basically saying, like, dude, we're on your side, we get it, but, like, you can't get through the Source Wall. There's no possible way to do that. And Relic's just like, well, the reservoir of emotional energy is on the other side of that. All of my research has led me to that. It's definitely there. So in order to dump the light that I've managed to save back over there, I need to get through. And Kyle points out, well, the entities inside of me, they agree with you, but they don't know, like, if you're right in that regard. They don't know if that's the truth. I mean, for all I know, I take it for what I am. I'm just a human trying to interpret what they're saying. And so Kyle turns to the Guardians, just being like, hey, I mean, why didn't the Book of Oa, why you guys Guardians, you've been around, you've seen the birth of the universe, why don't you know about this reservoir? And it's just like, history books are written by the victors. Maybe for whatever reason, the history books say, get off my back, I'm just a Guardian. So at that point, they try telling the Relic, like, maybe we should look somewhere else. And Relic just shuts him down, grabs hold of Kyle with his, like, weird tech stuff and says, all right, you know what? My universe didn't have a white lantern. So maybe that's what I need. Maybe I just need white light. So let's do that. And he starts draining Kyle of his white power. That came out wrong. And as he's doing so, the entities erupt forth out of Kyle. And Relic looks on, he's like, oh my god, these things are personifications of the forces, the things I'm trying to do. That's perfect. I'll use them. And the Guardians are like, don't mess with them, man. You are messing with the life itself if you do that. And he's like, I'm not messing, I'm experimenting. Totally different. So at that point, a bunch of Green Lantern javelins start blowing up all of Relic's tech, and the cavalry has arrived. Everyone's here to attack Relic. So big battle starts, everyone's firing, but before we get too deep into that, we cut back to the home of the Indigo Tribe, where John Stewart and his bunch of rookies are all talking to the Indigo Tribe, and the forger of the Indigo Lantern, like the power battery, Nostromo, and John's telling his rookies, like, hey, I've got a lock on where the Green Lanterns are. That's probably where the fight is. I'm gonna go. Rookies, you stay here. And they're just like, what? No, we're Green Lanterns in training. This is something we got to do too, right? And he's just like, all right, fine, whatever. Nostromo, are you in? And he's like, yeah, no, you stood with the Indigo Tribe once. We're all with you. Indigo Tribe's going to help you out. And he's like, great. But I need you to do something for me. I need your expertise. It's the whole reason I came here. I need you to build another lantern. So cut back to the fight. We see everyone's going after Relic. Even Kyle's fighting against him a little bit. But he is trying to convince Hal, like, nah, guys, like, he's crazy, but he's right. So at that point, we see Guy fires off a shot against Relic. He hasn't been told about the energy redirection thing, so he's about to get blasted in the face when all of a sudden John Stewart shows up, tackles him out of the way. Guy's just happy to see that John's alive. John throws a right hook into Guy's face saying, oh, and you joined the Red Lanterns. Thanks for telling me, buddy. We'll talk about this later. Also, you look like a deranged Santa in that suit. So at that point, the Red Lanterns say, all right, if we can't beat back Relic, we're going to destroy all of his tech. So Red Lanterns start blowing up all of his stuff. Meanwhile, the Green Lanterns are like, wait a minute, they've got a point. Let's use the Source Wall's properties to our advantage. So they push Relic's main ship up against the Source Wall, and it immediately becomes part of the wall itself. And Relic's like, no, that's where I was keeping all of my light. God damn it. All right, now I'm pissed. So the 4 Earth Lanterns that we are so familiar with, they say, wait a minute, hold on, Source Wall. That's how we can beat Relic. I've got a plan. And so Hal says to the Indigo Tribe, we need you to teleport us in between him and his redirection stuff. And anytime he punches us out, you teleport us back in there no matter what. And they say, cool. Actually, they say knock, but they say it like it's cool. And everyone else is just basically acting to distract Relic. So they get in there. They start fighting against Relic just with their fists. They don't even bother with the constructs or anything like that. Guy is spewing his Red Lantern napalm blood all over his face. And their entire goal is they're just going to push him into the Source Wall. And so they push and push and push. And Hal manages to pull Guy off of him. John stays back. The only one who's now driving the force of getting Relic into the wall is Kyle. And he's just like, you idiot, I'm trying to save your universe. And he's like, yeah, well, you did it the wrong way. And now we're both going to be part of the Source Wall. So he drags Relic there. And as he's doing so, he gets his power back because it was drained by Relic. And he says like, oh, you don't understand. I'm the White Lantern. As long as I embrace life, I am the hope for this universe, not you. So he gets 100% power. He pushes Relic into the wall, and they both kind of just phase through it. They don't stick to it immediately. They go through it, and everyone's like, oh, Jesus, what's going on? And then this giant white light goes out, and everyone's like, hey, Kyle came back. But through the white light actually comes Relic. And he's like, guys, I found it. It was the source. It's beyond the wall. I told you it was there. But then before he's able to get out, he becomes part of the Source Wall and is stuck there forever. And everyone realizes Kyle's not out again. He must be dead. He gave his life for the universe. So sad. So the Green Lanterns are all running out of juice. Carol's also only on 4%. Hal's like, look, whatever our differences are, I don't want you to see us like completely dead out here in space. You just go find a planet with an atmosphere and we'll be fine. And John's like, okay, yeah, great sacrifice play, but I brought the Indigo Lanterns for a reason. They're going to teleport us somewhere safe. Aren't you guys? And they say, yep. Actually, they say knock. And then all of a sudden, all the Green Lanterns, all the Red Lanterns, and Carol are teleported away. Red Lanterns back to their home planet, to which John is like, you sent Guy there? And he's like, you said all the Red Lanterns. I don't know what you want from me. I'm sending them back. And he's like, oh no, he's still stuck behind enemy lines. But the rest of them all arrive on Mogo. And on Mogo, they have a new power battery. And everyone's like, how is this possible? And John explains, I got Nostromo. He built a power battery before. We just had him do it again for the green one. Mogo actually collected all the shards from when when Oa blew up, and he was saving them for Nostromo to work on. So Hal's like, awesome. It's like nothing even happened except Kyle's dead. So whatever. So he starts saying the chant and everyone lights up their rings, save for a little side group of like monks and such. And they're just like, hey, what's going on, man? Why aren't you saying the oath? And he's like, Relic was right. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this entirely. When Kyle sacrificed himself, the reservoir was replenished. It's back up to full again. So they don't need to worry about it running out. But anyway, they say, yeah, Relic was right. The universe only has a limited amount of light. We shouldn't be wasting it like this. This isn't like, we're putting the universe at risk by using powers. So yeah, no, we're out. We're leaving the Green Lanterns. And then we cut back to the Guardians of the Universe, who are still looking around the Source Wall. And they're like, okay, well, we don't know how Kyle managed to pass through that. That was weird. That's not in any of our books. But still, maybe he's alive. Maybe he's on the other side. And then all of a sudden, there's another flash of light, and Kyle comes back out through. And the Guardians are like, dude, what did you see over there? And he's like, entities, they sacrifice themselves in order to refill the reservoir. It's good again. It's there's no problem to it at all. But I can't remember anything else about my time over there. And he's like, well, maybe there's still something in your memory. And Guardian looks inside his mind and says, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, no one else can know what's going on inside his head. That is too much in there. And they said, all right, great, you're alive, but we need to keep that a secret. You are now about to start your true journey as the White Lantern. So, yeah, that's all happening eventually. So, yeah, that's the end of Lights Out. Not a lot of change. Everything's still pretty much in its place. Obviously, we established this idea that the reservoir is running out and that it is a finite resource, but then they just refill the reservoir anyway. Honestly, the biggest thing that comes out of it is the entities are dead. The entities are no longer there anymore. They are used as energy, which is okay, I guess. That leaves the only entity still alive is Parallax, because they didn't get that one out of Sinestro. So that's going to be interesting. It's setting back the clock a little bit to kind of the beginning of Jeff Johns' run before these entities were kind of a thing at all. So I don't know. I'm interested. It's an interesting new setup for it, but everything else is kind of the same. They're just on Mogo instead of Oa, and Kyle is believed to be dead. So yeah, overall, I'd say this event was decent. Not great. I think that it had a lot of big parts moving, but in the end, it ended up being like not much at all is really happening. So I'm going to say this particular issue it's like a 7.5. It's good. It's fine. It's well written. It's just kind of what I expected at the end of this event. It doesn't really blow me away in any real regard. So yeah, we'll see what happens next across the Green Lantern mythos. Teen Titans Annual number 2, written by Scott Lobdell. It says layouts are by Barry Kitson, as well as some finished art, and then there's like 3 other artists, but I'm just going to give it to Barry Kitson. So, God, last time in Teen Titans, because of Forever Evil, they were thrown into the time stream, and then they're just kind of randomly quantum leaping everywhere. And then they said, Raven, you need to tie us together so that way we can all figure out where we're supposed to be. And they lost Solstice and Kid Flash, but they're still looking for them. And that's where this issue picks up. Dear Lord, this issue. So Superboy, Wonder Girl, and Red Robin all show up in a future Batcave that has been just utterly trashed and destroyed. And Red Robin apparently thought that this place would have like the technology in order to track down Solstice and Kid Flash, but because it's trashed, all that is gone. So they look around the cave to see what in the hell's going on, and then Wonder Girl comes across the corpse of Batman is inside one of like the suit tubes, and Red Robin's like, what? Hold on, wait a minute, we're like 20 years in the future, but this body is no older than 5 years old, which means that he like died not like old, like semi-recently. Like, what's going on? And also there's a pile of like dust that is apparently Alfred. So at that point, Superboy has been trying to like prod at the electronics with his telekinesis powers. He ends up activating a function from Batman after his death. A hologram pops up saying, Justice League, I've drawn him here. I'll hold him off as long as I can while you save the children. And then all of a sudden they get teleported out of the Batcave and up to the Watchtower, where they specifically make the point of, now wait a minute, the Watchtower was on the beach in the Forever Evil story we just came from. So, huh? And as they get up there, we see that the person who has teleported them is a 20 years older version of Beast Boy, now going by the name Beast Man, which is just the worst. So at that point, he introduces everything. He's like, yeah, okay, last time you saw me, apparently I went with Bunker to go find his, like, husband or boyfriend or whatever at the time. I didn't even get that from that comic, but I guess that's happened. Turns out there's a couple people left up here, but the Justice League is long said gone. And as we see the people left over, it's Rose Wilson and a bunch of new teens. I don't think any of them get real names. One of them is named Irony. One of them is named Stonehenge. I think one is just called Red. I don't care. None of them matter. So they're all training in like a danger room scenario sort of thing. And as they look up at our current Titans up looking at them, we see one of them gets really pissed off at Superboy. And Superboy's like, I don't know what in the hell's going on. He's like, you murdered the movement in Coral City. And he's like, no, I did. What the hell are you talking about? And so they start fighting briefly, but then Rose steps in and is just like, hey, Superboy, sorry. That's a whole thing. So she takes that kid away along with all the other kids. They never pop up again. And so at that point, Red Robin is separated by Beastman saying, hey, I need to talk to you like leader to leader. And the rest of them are like, yeah, Superboy says he'll go off on his own. Wonder Girl's going to go have a look around. So Superboy sits out on the outside of the watchtower, and then all of a sudden he's given like a brain blast by some psychic somewhere. And I'm just going to skip to the punch here because they eventually get to it. If you remember in Superboy, the comic itself, they introduced that Superboy is a clone made by Harvest of a son of Superman from a different timeline, who was then refixed by Harvest in this timeline, and now he's just super evil. That's what's happening here, is Superboy's meeting the clone of the guy he was originally from. So anyway, Red Robin talks to Beastman, and Beastman's basically like, okay, here's the thing. We have a time loop situation going on. You told me in the past exactly what to say right here in order to change things in the future. So I'm going to tell you everything that you told me to say in the past. And then we cut to Wonder Girl. She's walking her way through the watchtower. Her identity is not confirmed, but she just punches her way through anyway. And then the little identity confirmation is like, oh, yes, Wonder Girl, go right ahead. So Superboy goes to the moon and starts fighting. I mean, his name is John Lane Kent. I'm just going to call him John, but it's a whole thing. So anyway, he's like, oh, hey, I never noticed how handsome I was until now. And Superboy's like, you're evil because you took all of your memories of how you beat every hero on Earth and you put them into my brain just then. So I know everything about you now. So we don't even have to justify why we're fighting. So they start punching each other. John feels he has the upper hand, but Connor comes at him and throws it pretty hard back, throws him into the moon. They make their way into the molten heart of the moon, which I don't even know if the moon has a molten heart, but regardless, they make their way in there. And apparently John's presence is upgrading Superboy's telekinetic ability somehow, but Superboy's like, oh, or John's like, it's not going to matter. And Superboy's like, oh, but it is. I'm still going to beat you. So we go back to Red Robin, and he's just like, but if we're in a time loop, none of it matters because we're in a loop. Like, nothing I say can change anything. And he's like, right, but you don't understand. You shared with me things that you would never share with anyone. Tim Drake. And he's like, okay, I guess that doesn't really change anything. So then we see Cassie makes her way into the records room, and she gets a hologram of Red Robin. So they're all bloodied up and beaten, saying, we were betrayed. Cassie, Khan, Raven, Garfield, dead, murdered. One of our own betrayed our family. And then he disappears. And we see that Raven then steps in and wipes Cassie's memory of that recording. So then Red Robin comes in saying, hey, Cassie, I sensed Raven's nearby. And Raven's also there like, hey, I'm nearby. I found her. She was passed out in this room. And she's like, I guess I was. That's crazy. And then Raven tries to explain how like they have a special link because her armor is linked to Trigon. It doesn't matter. And at that point, they're like, okay, anyway, are you guys ready to go? Because I just learned a lot of crazy things from Beastman. And they say, yeah, sure, but where's Khan? So he's still fighting John out in the moon. They bust out of the moon. And apparently Khan uses his telekinetic ability to stop their movement relative to the solar system so that everything is still moving except for them, which causes them to hurtle at super high speeds towards the watchtower. and he impales John on one of the spikes. And Khan's like, I did it, and now I'm going to kill you for killing all the heroes. But before he can, he disappears out of time and gets teleported into the Krypton Returns event. Yep. And so John's left there, and he's basically bleeding out on the spikes. We see Beastman goes out in a spacesuit and picks up John, brings him into a medical bay. Him and Rose say, okay, this is all part of the plan. We need to get him into Superboy's costume because they look identical, and therefore the rest of the Teen Titans will think that this is Superboy. So they put him in a costume, and at that point the other Titans arrive and they say, hey, we found him outside. He's totally beaten up. He should probably stay here for now. And Red Robin's like, hey, we're about to teleport again through time because we haven't got that locked down. Raven, do you think you're going to be able to keep a hold on him here if we go through time? And she's like, nah, I can't do that. That's too much. We go now together or not at all. And he's just like, all right, fair enough. So they take the badly wounded now John Lane Kent and teleport him through time, thinking that he's a friend. And Robin says, thank you, Beastman, for all you've done. We promise we'll make sure this future never comes to pass. And Beastman and Rose are like, did we do the right thing? Only time will tell. What? Huh? Why? All right, so coming out of this, I thought for sure we were just going to completely wrap up this like jumping around time thing, but guess not. I thought that was all this annual was for, but nope. Instead, what this annual is for is we are separating it out so that the Superboy on their team is not Superboy. He is evil Superboy from an alternate timeline that is actually Harvest's adopted son. Meanwhile, our Superboy is off doing Superboy stuff in an event with Superman. I also want to point out here that at the end of Superboy 24, he just doesn't have his powers anymore. And since this one now leads directly into Superboy 25, because that's part of the Krypton Returns event, that means that Superboy 24 means nothing. All of these Scott Lobdell has a hand in, to some extent. I think Superboy is currently written by Justin Jordan, but like, to some extent, Scott Lobdell sets stuff up. So, whatever. I don't like this issue, shockingly enough. I think that this is stupidly complex for no reason. It feels like editorial just kind of looked down and said, now, wait a minute. Our Superboys aren't lining up. How do we have Superboy happening and Teen Titans happening at the same time? It's impossible, I tell you. Let's make 2 Superboys. And Scott Lobdell stepped up and said, I've already got one, waiting in the wings. We just need a time travel story to get him here. It's so needlessly complex. I don't know where this is going to end up. Frankly, I don't care. I'm so done with the whole Superboy doing anything. He's just been pulled around by every other book. So screw it. This one is I was going to say 5. That didn't feel right. This one's a 4. This one is a straight up 4. It's not that the book itself has anything inherently awful with it. The art is fine. The stories it's setting up may be good, but I've learned from history now that the stories that I hope they eventually get to, they never really do. And so it's all just dependent on itself, and therefore it's a 4. Action Comics Annual Number 2, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Dan Jurgens and Kenneth Rocafort. This is the beginning of Krypton Returns, which, dear Lord, okay, so prior reading that you need. The last issues for everything in the story was the Hell one-shot during the Villains Month, Superman 24, Supergirl 24, and Teen Titans Annual Number 2. All of that leads into this. None of it is needed because this is stupid anyway. So we open up with Superman floating through space, something like that, and an entire solar system has been torn asunder by what he calls a temporal tsunami, where a wave of chronal energy has crashed over everything and it's all destroyed. And he's looking around saying like, oh my God, luckily there was no signs of life in this entire solar system. But if there were, they'd all be dead right now. What am I supposed to do about this? Also, I was just pulled into deep space, so I don't even know why I'm here. And then he looks around and he sees a portal nearby and he's like, that's weird. But if there's anything I've learned as Superman, it's fly into the portal to find out more information. So he goes in, and as he comes out the other side, Supergirl is just like right there waiting. And he's like, what? What are you doing here? And she's like, I don't know. I was dealing with Brainiac and Cyborg Superman. And he's like, what? What the hell is a Cyborg Superman? What? Please, more information. She's just like, I don't know. I was hoping you had some more info. And then all of a sudden, Superboy shows up through another portal, and he's like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here either. I was just plucked out of a time stream over in Teen Titans. It has nothing to do with my book whatsoever. And Supergirl and Superboy start arguing because, of course, they're not on good terms because he's a clone and she doesn't like clones. But at that point, he's just like, okay, everyone chill. I'm betting this guy knows something what's up. And they all look up, and there is the Oracle, the giant space rock deity thing that we saw back from Scott Lobdell's run on Superman. And he's like, hey, Oracle, I met you back in Hell on Earth. Tell me what's going on, man. I need some information. And Superboy's like, I don't think he really talks much. He's like, he's going to talk today. I am not in the mood. And so he goes up and starts like basically threatening Oracle. And Supergirl and Superboy are like, is he seeming like angrier than usual? This is a bit weird for him, right? So at that point, Oracle finally raises a hand, points out a finger, and points him to go like that way. And so it's like, all right, well, better than nothing. So they make their way that way, and eventually they reach Krypton. It is still here, it is alive, and it looks a hell of a lot different, but immediately Kara's like, oh my God, it's Krypton, this is perfect. Everyone, let's go home, we're here, except for you, Superboy, you piss off, I don't want you right now. And they start making their way down towards the planet, but then Superman like grabs her by the cape and is just like, yo, we don't know nothing about it. Krypton is gone. We established this. Why in the hell is this here? And she's like, exactly. It's hell. He must have done it. He must have somehow saved Krypton without having to sacrifice Earth. And Superman's like, that's not better. That means he's messing with things outside the natural order. Can we just please look into this a little bit before we like storm headfirst to the planet? And she's like, fine. And then all of a sudden, a giant cannon starts just unloading on them, and theoretically it shouldn't do anything, but they suddenly teleport away to a moon of Krypton, which is completely uninhabitable, but they're there anyway. And as they're landing, they hear this voice speak out to them saying like, hey, you guys wanted answers, I'm here to provide them. And Superman and Supergirl look up, and they see that Superboy is now possessed by the Oracle. And he's like, yeah, it's a good thing you brought this idiot here. I'm able to speak through him. So let me tell you everything that's been going on. And long story short, when Hell disappeared, he traveled back through time to Jor-El's younger days. And in doing so, he then, as we saw in the Hell one-shot, changed the time stream so that he was basically around longer. And then apparently he's just kept on changing the time stream over and over and over again, trying to reach the point where they could stop Krypton from self-destruction. And he kept on messing with things, including messing with the Clone War. He was messing with Jor-El's history and like Zod being successful at stuff. He's just been screwing the timeline all over the place. And the Oracle is pointing out like, this is really bad. Every time he does this thing, it sends out these chronal tidal waves that threaten the Omniverse. And so they go over the whole timeline real quick, and Oracle's like, great, cool, so now I need your help. And then Supergirl comes up and slaps him in the face, severing the bond. And Superman's like, what in the hell, man? And then Supergirl points out that because Oracle is so celestial crazy, it was burning out Superboy's brain, and Superman didn't even notice. And Superboy's like, hey, thanks. I could feel my brain being a bit jellified there. So at that point, another voice chimes in saying, hey, don't worry, I know what Oracle was about to say. And it's this woman who Supergirl immediately recognizes as Feora, the second hand to Zod, and she is not welcome. She is a evil person on Krypton. And Feora's like, that's true, but that was the old timeline. I mean, I still did do some bad things, but like now I'm part of the resistance against hell. I need you to trust me, because otherwise it means the death of the Omniverse. And Superman's like, I mean, death of the Omniverse sounds pretty bad, Supergirl. And she's like, no, she could suck an egg. I hate her. But Superman reaches out, shakes her hand, and says, all right, deal, but you got to tell us what's going on. She's like, it's better if I show you. And so she starts leading them over the ridge, and we see that all of Krypton, on this moon at least, but she's saying all of Krypton, has been enslaved by Hell. He has put himself as the ruler of Krypton because he has all these special powers that, of course, none of these Kryptonians have under the Red Sun. So they are all imprisoned, and Superboy immediately sees this and just like, screw this noise. Nobody deserves this, even if this isn't the right timeline. So he launches an assault. Feora's like, you idiot. I have been living in secrecy away from Hell until we got to the point where you guys would come along and I can tell you about our time travel plan. Son of a bitch. So now all the guards have been made aware of their presence. They start coming up and attacking. And so Feora opens up 3 portals and she says, okay, here's the plan. Here's what this event is going to be in Superman, Supergirl, and Superboy number 25. Superman. Well, I'll start with Supergirl because she goes back farther. Supergirl, we need to go through the timeline and make sure that it is corrected at all the major points that Hell is messed up. So Supergirl, your first thing is you go back to the Clone War and you make sure that it goes the way it's supposed to go. And she's like, right. And Superboy, you got to go back and make sure that Supergirl's rocket gets off of Krypton when it's supposed to. And he's like, I don't think I'm up for that. She's like, tough, do it anyway. And Superman, you've got the hardest one of all because yours where the main event's going to take place. You need to go back to the moment where Hell fully took control of Krypton and stop him exactly at the moment where he succeeds. Because somehow it won't work if it's off the time barrier or whatever. And he's like, okay, are you sure there's like no other way? And he's like, nope, me and the Oracle worked through this. We all know what's going on. This is how it's got to be. And so each of them steps towards their portal and just like, oh man, this is for the Omniverse. And like this whole timeline's going to disappear. And Superboy's like, okay, bye. And he just jumps right into his portal. Supergirl goes over, talks to Superman. It's like, hey, Cal, look, I know I haven't been the easiest while me and you were on Earth together. Sorry. And he's like, yeah, no, apology accepted. Just in case we don't see each other again. We're cool. And so each of them then goes through their portal. And we see Hell then comes up to Feora and just like, hey, Feora, what the hell, man? Why are you attacking my people? What's going on here? But then we get a glimpse of each of them in their new timeline. Supergirl is in this jungle forest. She meets up with some clones that are just like at a campfire. Of course, she's still wearing the crest of L. So they immediately take her and like hold her hostage. And she's like, good thing I'm invincible because of my yellow sun radiation. And then they scratch her skin and she's like, oh crap, I ran out of yellow sun radiation. And then they go to Superboy, who's a week before the planet explodes. He meets up with Kara, who she has no idea who he is. So she's like, hey, I was just sneaking out away from my parents' place. You want to hang out with me? And he's like, sure. Is this going to be a thing? I'm not opposed to this. And then we go to Superman, who makes his way inside of Jor-El's lab. His suit immediately shuts down, so he's no longer wearing the House of L. It just turns back to its normal white. And he is then attacked by the bodyguard of the House of L, which is his mother, Lara. And she's like, hey, you stupid idiot, why are you breaking into the House of L? And he's like, oh, gosh, Mom, I need to speak to Jor. So then we cut back to the other timeline again. We see this massive explosion. Hell is super pissed off. And he's like, all right, well, I'm essentially a god character. So in order to figure out what Feora did, I'm just going to look back in time slightly because I can do that. And so he peeks back in time and he sees the Oracle and he sees the 3 portals and he sees Superman, Superboy, and Supergirl. And just like, okay, is that it? Is that all it needs to be? And then he sees Supergirl and he's just like, My beloved, how dare you betray me again? All right, this sucks. I'm done with them. And so he is ready to declare war, as we see the Oracle is still just out in space doing whatever. And that's it. Krypton Returns is going to be in all the 25s for the Superman family books, except for Action and Superman Wonder Woman. I love a good time travel story. Like, that's just me. I love time travel stories because they're so ripe with just like mind-bending twistiness of like, oh my god, this is such a creative thing we could do. We could upset the entire status quo just with this single story, but like not make it stupid and contrived, despite the fact that almost all writers, Scott Lobdell included, make it stupid and contrived. So yeah, I'm not excited for Krypton Returns. It's just a single month, so I'm not that plussed about it. I'm just upset that we have to deal with hell more. We have to keep doing this. The plus side of it is this marks the end of Scott Lobdell on Action Comics, and I think Superman pretty soon too. So I'll take my wins. I'm happy with that. Yeah, no, it's a who cares event. I'm sure there'll be some sort of fallout where it's like, oh, but nobody remembers Superboy exists, or oh, Superman, I don't know, is now brown haired. I don't know, something stupid. It's not going to matter in the long run. But I would say this is probably just like a flat 5. It's not awful, but it's not good in any way either. It's just straight down the middle of, there's a reason that I am not having this book in physical format. A, because I forgot, but B, it's just not worth it. It's so not worth it to seek out. So yeah, 5 for this. We'll see what more picks up later. Damian, Son of Batman, #1, written in art by Andy Kubert. So this is in the, as it's called, Batman of Bethlehem timeline, where Batman dies at some point and Damian takes over as Batman. This is showing, I guess, the lead up to that, because I gotta be honest, all that's pre-New 52. I'm not that familiar with it. Anyway, we open up with a slightly older Damian. He seems to be maybe like somewhere between 16 to 20. And it just says some years from now, Robin and Batman are investigating a gruesome murder scene down at the docks. There is just a bunch of dead people there, and they have no idea who did it. It's complete mystery. So they're looking around all these dead bodies, trying to find any hints. Damian's kind of just playing it like as a joke almost. He's saying how bad the bodies smell, but he's not actually carrying the fact that these were people who were murdered. And he's just like, oh yeah, it seems to be more than one person, Batman. Either that or they were extremely efficient, but ooh, geez, that smell. So they're both looking through all the rubble and whatnot. At one point, they look at one of the bodies, and Damian says, oh my god, it's Tim. Oh no, wait, it's just someone as ugly as Tim. Ha ha ha. And Batman's like, dude, seriously, what are you doing here? So at that point, Batman lifts up one of the bodies, and he finds a Jokerized fish. And he's like, okay, this seems a little on the nose for the Joker, but maybe it's something else. And as he lifts up the fish, it sets off a trap, which explodes the fish in a giant explosion, also taking out Damian. Damian manages to hear it just beforehand, but he's still knocked out. And as he comes to, he looks over and he sees Batman's cape like buried in rubble. And he's like, oh, geez, why didn't Batman react in time? His cowl should have picked up the same thing I heard. And so he digs out Batman, and it seems that because of the explosion, Batman is dead. So then we have a whole funeral scene. Bruce is buried. Damian kind of like blames himself because, again, he had heard the trap being set, but he didn't warn Batman in time. So he takes some time to grieve, and he believes it should have been him. So then weeks later, he goes to an island called Morgeno, where apparently the League of Assassins is, along with his mother and grandfather. And he just makes his way in, and all the guards are like, oh, Master Damian, didn't expect you. And he's like, yeah, I didn't announce myself. Go get my mom and my granddad for me. So he walks down this aisle full of, like, aborted clones, more or less. They all look like they're still in development. And Roz and Talia show up, and they're just like, hey, how you doing? Good to show up at least once a decade, you little bastard. And he's just like, yeah, hi, how's it going? Look, here's the thing. I need your help. And then Talia, before he can even explain what he needs help for, he's just like, yeah, no, we get it. You feel guilty because your dad died. Let me explain to you exactly how we came to grow you. And she just goes through his entire backstory of they slept together one night and then they made him a test tube baby and then they grew up and then they did everything you saw in the Grant Morrison run. And then she says, we're not going to help you with nothing. We know that you want to avenge Batman's death, but that's not for us. Batman's dead. You were raised to be the heir to the League of Assassins, but you turned that down. So here's the thing. We are reneging your League of Assassins membership. You are no longer part of that. You must solely devote yourself towards becoming the heir of Batman. So get out of here. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to be Batman. You're crazy. I'm going to just keep doing my Robin thing. So he goes back to the Batcave, and he just basically starts tracking online. He's looking for any sort of chatter in the supervillain clubs about who's taking credit for the death of Batman. And he sees a few people. He comes across Mr. Freeze claiming it, and so he seemingly straight up murders Mr. Freeze. We see Killer Croc's claiming it, straight up murders Killer Croc. We see Jackanapes is claiming it, which I know that was a thing in the future timeline, but I didn't know that was like an already established thing. But either way, he just kind of beats up Jackanapes because he still needs to be alive for later on. And we see Robin's just covered in blood, and he's like, oh, I'm anyone who's taking credit of it, I'm sure it wasn't them. No one be that stupid, but I'm still gonna take my anger out on them. So then Damian goes to a church, and he goes to confession, and the other person on the other side of the confession is like, all right, look, I know your family. I may not know you like specifically, but like, I know you guys are the Bat people, and Batman would not want you killing. Stop killing. And he's just like, well, Batman only did half measures. Arkham was a revolving door. All the same reasons that everyone online gives for why Batman should kill. And he's just like, well, no, that's wrong. There's a reason he didn't do it that way. And he's like, well, now he's dead, so we're going to do things my way instead. So Damian storms out, and we see that whoever the person in the confessional was, like, knows Damian definitively. I can't tell who it is, though. So at that point, we see, criminals coming up dead in the Gotham Gazette, and Alfred goes to Damian and is like, hey, you know anything about criminals coming up dead? And he's just like, nah, good on them, though. It's good they're gone. And he's like, yeah, you do understand you're going against everything your father stood for. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so at that point, he storms out. He says, Batman's gone. I'm to blame. So screw it, Pennyworth. I'm going to do what's needed to get done. And we see him. He's putting on his gear. He's got a Bat motorcycle. And he's just like, all right, I know this was all Joker. I'm going to go out. I'm going to find him. And I'm going to kill him definitively. And as he's about to go out, Bruce Wayne shows up, along with a cat by his side, and he says, young man, what in the hell do you think you're doing? And Damian's just like, what? And that's the issue. I mean, it's fine. It's a good enough issue. It's just, it's weird. Being an alternate timeline, especially with something that right now in continuity, Damian is dead himself. It's just kind of weird to have this. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with this timeline as I probably should be. I did read Batman 666, and obviously there was that flash forward issue of Batman Incorporated. So I don't think there's much more I really need to be aware of when it comes to this continuity, but I don't know. It's an interesting concept at the very least. It seems weird that we've already got Batman, or at least Bruce, back alive here. Maybe it's a trick. I don't know. It's a strange little cliffhanger. Overall, I'd say this issue's probably just I'll give it a flat 7. It's got a lot it needs to get done, so I'm not that upset with how fast-paced it is, but it does feel like it doesn't quite focus on the right parts. It spends a bit too much time of Damian just being like, I'm the one that killed Batman because I should have saved him. like, okay, you can spend a few pages on that, but we don't need the whole issue being that. So yeah, 7 for this. We'll see what future issues does. It's only a 4-issue miniseries, so it'll be done before you know it. Nightwing Annual number 1, written by Kyle Higgins, art by Jason Masters, with Daniel Sampier and Vicente Cifuentes on art. So this is apparently kind of a tie-in to the Batgirl story that's going on, and it is in the fact of it's set in the same time of continuity, but doesn't really feel like it forwards it at all. So anyway, we open up in Gotham City in a apartment of someone named Ted Carson, and we have, as he'll be named soon enough, Firefly, in this guy's apartment saying, hey, sorry, I wish you didn't come to this. I didn't want to have to beat you, but now you get to smell gasoline, so that's always a good smell. And he douses this guy in gasoline, throws a lighter on him, and the whole apartment, including this guy named Ted, goes up in flames. And as we see in Gotham, we have Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon moving Dick out of his apartment. He has decided to move to Chicago full-time and spend the rest of his time there. And him and Barbara are talking, saying like, yeah, it's been so crazy recently for both of us. Like, you've got all your stuff going on of killing your brother, and the GCPD wants you and giving up the name of Batgirl. And then you got my thing where I had to deal with Tony Zucco recently. So that was a whole thing. Yeah, it's just super weird for us. And as he's going through all of his stuff, he finds this picture from their first night on patrol together, where Barbara's giving him a kiss, and she's like, "Oh yeah, no, that was a great time. Why? You know what, Barbara? Let's just talk about this. Why hasn't it ever worked out for us? The timing's always been wrong, but like it could be something good. Why do we not do this?" And then as they're talking about it, the bat signal comes up, and he's like, "Speaking of timing being awful." So she says he should go handle it, and he's like, "Nah, I want you around." She's like, "I'm not Batgirl." And he's like, "Don't be Batgirl. I'll go pick up whatever the details are from GCPD, and then you can help me solve whatever it is." And she's like, "All right, fair enough." So he gets the details from Bullock, and apparently there is this movie star, producer, something like that, named Cindy Cook, super rich and whatnot, and she had her production company burned to the ground. Yesterday, her talent agency blew up. 3 of her executives were in there. They went to the hospital. And then, as we just saw, Ted was her ex-husband. And they were still on decent terms, but Ted's apartment was burned to the ground. And he says, okay, well, why do you need a Bat family member? This seems like something the GCPD should be able to handle. And it's like, well, she's not talking to the police. She wants to talk to a Bat member. So Nightwing and Barbara go and talk to her, and she's just wearing like a ski mask and basic gear or whatnot. And Cindy then says like, yeah, okay, there's this guy, his name was Garfield Linz. He was a pyrotechnics guy that we had to fire recently. He didn't take it well, and his nickname on set was Firefly because he likes fire so much. So yeah, I'm willing to bet this is him. And then she starts breaking down saying, oh, me and Ted, like, we were divorced, but like I always hoped that things would work out. It was just life pulled us in different directions, but I guess now it never will. And Barbara and Dick look at each other like, seems like there's a theme going on this week. So we go to a film set where there's a director yelling cut, and someone comes up and tells him like, hey, there are some people in your trailer. You might want to go deal with that. And he's like, did you let producers on set? God damn it, I hate those producers. And as he makes his way in there, he finds Nightwing and Barbara, and they're just looking through his stuff, being like, hey, loved your movies. Hoping this one's also going to be a hit. Anyway, Garfield Linz, he is a friend of yours. He worked on a bunch of your productions. Where's he at? And he's like, oh, this is invasion of privacy. I won't tell you nothing. And Barbara comes up and basically just starts threatening him. And he looks at Nightwing and he's just like, don't look at me. She's the good cop. So at that point he says, I don't know. He's been in some trouble, but I know where his workshop is. So they make their way to Garfield Linz's apartment, and at that point Dick basically just lays it down again. He's like, look, here's the thing. We were talking about it before. We were saying, like, why hasn't the timing been right? after hearing what Cindy had to say, why don't we just go for it? Look, you need a new start. You're being chased by the GCPD. I'm moving to Chicago. Come with me. Come with me to Chicago and we can just start a new life there together. And she's like, are you serious? And before she can even say anything, Dick's like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. You still got a boyfriend. He's in a coma. Like, it's fine. Well, just forget I said anything. And then they find a list with the 3 places that have already been hit crossed out, and one more is a charity dinner at the end. And he's just like, well, guess we know where he's going to hit next. So they inform Bullock. Bullock brings all of the cops in Gotham to protect this charity dinner. And as they are looking over it all, they're just like, that's weird. It's been some time, but he hasn't attacked yet. And there's no reason he should have attacked this place either. Why has he said, crap, it's allured away all the cops to here. So Cindy's left unprotected. Son of a bitch. So they make their way back over to Cindy's hiding place. And Firefly is there already attacking her. And we see Nightwing and Barbara come in and just basically start knocking him down. And they do so in expert fashion. However, before they're able to fully take him down, he starts to fly away. And he throws back a flame grenade. I don't know what you want to call it. But it engulfs Cindy's entire apartment in flames. And Cindy is inside at that point. So Dick jumps in, goes to save her. Manages to get the body out, but it's already dead. However, it's very apparent by that point that this was not Cindy. This was someone who was dressed up to look like Cindy enough that when the body was charred, it would have been impossible to identify her and they would have assumed it was Cindy. And we also have another one of the bodyguards who was there chime up saying, yeah, that's Cindy's agent. She shouldn't have even been here. We have no idea what's going on here. So Nightwing and Barbara start to logic it out, and they say, okay, well, was there another entrance? And they say, yeah, it was through a panic room. That's how Firefly got in at the first place. And it's like, okay, so he's familiar with Cindy's layout. What does that mean? And they both come to the conclusion of like, oh, this isn't Garfield. So we cut down to the docks, and we see Firefly has the real Cindy tied up. And he's just like, hey, sorry. I just needed to tie you up so you wouldn't leave until I got back. I'll untie you now. And she's like, what? Who are you? And he takes off his mask, and it turns out it's Ted, the ex-husband. And the guy who was actually killed in the apartment was the real Garfield Lens. He died. Ted faked his death so that he and Cindy could run away together. And as we get the explanation is that the reason their relationship went on the rocks is because Cindy's meteoric rise to fame basically meant she couldn't have time to talk to Ted. She couldn't be with Ted as much as they would have hoped. So they just kind of drifted their separate ways. But now that he's faked Cindy's death, they can just run away together and they can live happily ever after in another country. And she's just like, you killed people, dude. That's not cool. I was scared for my life. No, that's not okay. Why did you think I'd be okay with this? And he's like, well, regardless, I'm going on that boat tonight, and you are going to be there one way or another. So he's about to attack Cindy. Nightwing and Barbara come in and stop him in the nick of time. And, it's just a whole fight scene going on. But they eventually get him underwater, punch him in the face, and knock him out. And it's just like, great, cool, we did it. We saved Cindy. So at that point, the police arrive. They take in Ted. And Cindy explains to Nightwing, like, yeah, no, it's... Nightwing asks what happened between you two. And it's as I explained before, of they drifted away. It was just a thing. But Cindy makes the point of, I didn't want to push it because if it was meant to be, the timing would be right. It shouldn't be something where, we make these excuses of the timing never being right. We would have found a way to work it out regardless. It wouldn't have been a thing we had to force. And Nightwing's like, oh, okay, I get where this is going. So at that point, Nightwing meets up with Barbara again on the rooftop, and she basically says, look, I can't give you an answer right now. I do need to think on it, but I'm open to it. So how about before you leave tomorrow, I'll swing by tomorrow morning and I can talk to you and we can figure out what we're doing. And he's just like, yeah, no, cool. Sounds great. So next morning comes, Barbara knocks on his door, and when she opens it, he's already left. All of his stuff has been packed. He's already on the road. She calls him up and says, hey, I'm at your place. Looks like you left. And he's like, yeah, something came up in Chicago. I had to go. I was going to call you when I thought you were awake. And she's just like, you don't got to make an excuse. We all know what's happening here. And he's just like, yeah, it's just know I always cared about you, Barbara, and I still do. And she's like, yeah, you too. Take care of yourself. And they hang up, and Dick looks over at the picture that he took from their first night patrolling, and we get a little flashback again to Robin basically flirting with Barbara, saying, so, what do you think? How's the night going? She's like, it's like a 7.5. And he's like, 7.5? That's great. That's means for celebration. Here, let me take a picture. And so they take a picture together, and she's like, oh, that's kind of cute. Almost worth an 8. And she kisses him on the cheek. That's it. That's the issue. I like it. I think it's solid. I like when this stuff goes into clearly two characters liking each other, but they establish why it just isn't working right now. And the real reason is that, it's hard to upset the status quo in long-running comics like this. But I think this was well done. I think they both got crazy things going on in their lives right now. One is living possibly hundreds of miles away, depending how far away Chicago is from Gotham. But it just makes sense that it couldn't work out right now, but they really, really wanted to. And I think this established it in a nice way. As for the whole Firefly mystery, I think it was well done. I didn't see it coming, just because if you look back at the way that the intro scene is written with the death of the quote-unquote Ted, when it was actually Garfield, they actually phrase it in a way where it's not just completely a misdirect. It's written in a way where you could have read it that way from the first time. So yeah, solid writing, solidly done all around. I'm going to say this is as Batgirl gave Robin on the date, it is a 7.5. It's a very well done issue. Just missing a little bit of extra stuff, but I couldn't tell you what it really needs to change. It's just not quite hitting that 8 level for me, but a 7.5 is nothing to slouch at. So yeah, solid issue. Aquaman Annual Number 1, written by John Ostrander, art by Geraldo Borges and Netho Diaz. So this is yet another lead-in to the Aquaman and the Others series that we will eventually get at some point in the future. And this one picks up on the East China Sea, where Aquaman is giving chase to some weird fish mutant creature things that he has no idea what's going on with them. And when he tries to telepathically control them, all he's getting out of them is like feelings of rage and anger. So he follows them to a small island, and before they arrive, we see on this island is, I always forget his name, the operative, that's it, the old guy in the suit with the airplane, and his grandson are on this island. It's like a base of operations, but they much prefer to be up in the air, or at least the old man does. But the grandson is talking to Sky, who is the Native American woman who joined the others on their last adventure in, what the hell was that? Aquaman like 20, I think? I don't know. Regardless, Operative sees this and be like, what the heck? How'd she even get here? We're on the middle of an island in the middle of the East China Sea. What's going on? And she's just like, oh, I can travel through the ghost lands. That's my ability. So, yeah, I can just show up here. I wanted to see Aaron. And it's just like, yeah, behind my back. I don't trust you, lady. And Aaron's like, you don't trust anybody. That's kind of your whole thing. And he's like, yeah, and it served me well so far. Get on the plane. We need to go. And he's like, oh, your secrets. I trust her. Doesn't my opinion matter? And at that point, the mutants pop out of the ocean and start attacking, as does Aquaman. And he's like, hey, Operative, you're under attack. And he's like, yeah, thanks, Aquaman. Doing great there. So they continue fighting, trying to figure out what's going on, who's the person that's coming to attack them. And then Operative sees that there are actually some flying creatures attacking the island as well. And he's just like, crap, the sea one's just a trickery. It's a fake attack. I got to go back to my airplane, see what's going on. So everyone continues fighting on the beach. Aaron ends up getting electrocuted by an electric eel, and it knocks him out unconscious, much to Sky's dismay. Meanwhile, inside the airplane, the Operative has found literal flying monkeys have stolen the helmet of Volstagg, the guy who died during the Aquaman and the Others like storyline, and they managed to fly away with it. And as soon as they get away, all of the oceanic mutants just disappear. They turn into dust and no problem anymore. So Sky's trying to care for Erin. She has minor healing abilities, but nothing too big, and he is bad. He is not doing okay. So she's like, okay, I can bring you all into the Ghostlands, and there's a spirit there, a healing spirit that will save you. Let's go. So they all go into these Ghostlands, and Operative's like, I don't believe in miracles or God. And Aquaman's like, you didn't believe in me either when we met, so whatever. So they make their way in, they find this healing spirit, and he's just like, he's not Native American. Why should I help him? And he's just like, because he means a lot to me. Please, just heal him. He's like, fine, whatever. By the way, you see that shadowy figure over in the distance? It's a sorceress. She's evil. Don't trust her. And then all of a sudden the sorceress like sees them and starts like chasing after them. They manage to get out of the ghost lands, leaving Erin behind in the hands of the healing spirit. And they're like, okay, that was weird, but what's going on now? So they get back onto the plane, and Operative explains, yeah, it was a fake attack. They stole the helmet from Volstagg, and we need to get together the others. It's clearly a thing for the others. So Aquaman sends out a telepathic message to get Yawara. We see that she's in the Amazon fighting off like lumberjacks, deforesters. She straight up slits their throats and lets some of them run away. And she's just like, yeah, that's right. This is your only warning. It's not much of a warning. You kind of slit their throat. And then she talks to the spirit of the Amazon. That's basically saying, like, don't give them warnings. Kill them all. They're just going to keep coming back. And she's like, well, I will be there for when they come back. But I can sense Aquaman is calling me, so I'm not going to be there, like, right now. And the Forest Spirit is like, we gave you your powers. We can take them away. And she's like, I got to do the thing. She's like, fine, whatever, go. But you can't take your cats with you. So the lepers are left behind. Meanwhile, Yawara and Aquaman teleport to where Prisoner of War is, and he's at a graveyard, like laying to rest some fellow military men. And he's just like, oh yeah, whatever you guys are up for, I'm in. So they all teleport out, and they start talking, saying, yeah, no, it's someone stole it because it's got intense magic power, just like all the other artifacts from the Atlanteans. Like it's clearly that's the whole reason why. And Operative manages to find somehow on his computer a woman named Madame Zan, who she stole it somehow because they tracked the energy signature. And Aquaman's like, that kind of sounds like Madame Xanadu, but I don't think this is her. She doesn't sound like ever going to star in my book. So at that point, Yawara teleports the whole group over to where Madame Zan is. And we see Madame Zan gets her helmet from the flying monkeys. She's like, perfect. This planet is doomed, but if I put on this helmet, I won't need to eat or breathe or drink or anything. I will keep me alive forever, and therefore I can leave this planet, no problem. She tries putting it on, but the helmet rejects her, and she throws it away. And she's like, well, that was a lot for nothing. Guess I'm going to have to go through my original plan of just killing everyone that makes this planet uninhabitable. So on to that, I guess. And then the flying monkeys look at her and it's like trying to speak to her, but they're just basic animals. And she's like, right, you guys are in intense pain because of the way I mutated you to exist. Be gone with you. And she just vaporizes them out of existence. So the group teleports in. They realize that there's nothing around where they teleport, and just like, crap, this is a trap. And then immediately they're all teleported out separately. We see Prisoner of War is met by what appears to be a witch queen of New Orleans, where he just came from. And he's like, you're not the witch queen. She's buried in a different cemetery. And she's like, fine, fair enough. It's me, Madame Zan. Do you want to help me? Because I can free you of your ghosts. And he's like, Then we cut to Yawara, who's teleported back to the Amazon, and everything's cut down. And the Forest Spirit comes up being like, you left and everything's gone now. And she's like, you're not the Forest Spirit. That's not what the Forest Spirit looks like at all. And she's like, fine, it's me, Madame Zan. But I can help you save your forest because I'm kind of looking to save the planet as a whole. You in? And she's like, And we go to the Operative, who, Madame Zan's just standing there. She's not even trying to be anything. And she's like, hey, I read your mind, and I can go ahead and take your soul and put it into your grandson's body, and so you'll be young again. Isn't that what you want? To be young and free of that suit? And he goes, And then we go to Sky, who sees the ghost of her mom, and the ghost of her mom's like, hey, it's me, I'm your mom. And she's like, no, you're not. And she's like, fine, it's me, Madam Zan. I can bring back your mom, though. That's totally a thing I could do. And Sky goes, And then we go to Aquaman, and he's teleported back to Atlantis, and Mara's sitting on the throne like, hey, Arthur, let's talk. And she's like, you're not Mara. And she's like, yes, fine, whatever. Why is nobody following for my trick here? I'm Madam Zan. But then Aquaman's like, okay, well, you're not Madame Xanadu either, so what's with the name? She's like, oh, okay, so you saw that one too. Fine, I'm Morgan Le Fay, the sister of Madame Xanadu, and I hate what's going on with this planet. I know you feel the same. I'm gonna save it by killing people who are problems. You in? And Aquaman's like, no. And he's like, all right, whatever. Nobody else was falling for my stuff anyway. It was just teleport you all back. So they all get stuck back to a harbor in Hong Kong. And Aquaman's like, oh yeah, hey, did anybody else get the full info? She's Morgan Le Fay, and she's going to like purge the planet of people. So this must be where she's doing it. And all of a sudden, Morgan causes this giant tsunami to start going after Hong Kong. Aquaman launches in a plan saying, okay, prisoner of war, use your manacles to make an unbreakable shield. Sky, give him a power up from the Ghostlands. Yawara and Operative just try to get to her. She's the one causing it. We need to knock her out. So everyone launches in the plan, but turns out Yawara actually gave in. She opened up her mind. She didn't want the forest to be destroyed, so she decided to go with Le Fay's plan, and she puts Sky in a headlock so that she's unable to give Prisoner the power up. The tsunami starts breaking through. Operative then starts attacking Yawara, and they get a whole fight scene to themselves, and Morgan Le Fay is just like, haha, none of you separately have the ability to beat me. And then Aquaman just comes up out of the water, punches her in the face. He gets blasted back by some magic, and she's like, you know, I had a problem with a King Arthur before, and I killed him. So what makes you any different? And he's like, I'm not dead. So she blasts him with magic. He uses his trident to redirect it or something, and then Morgan Le Fay just disappears into the water. At that point, Yawara comes to her senses, and she's like, oh my god, I opened my mind up to her, and she took control. And Sky's like, hey, it's no big deal, it's mind control. Everyone gets that every once in a while. It's comic books, seriously. And she's like, no, none of you can ever trust me again. I hereby quit. And she teleports out, and before she leaves, she tells Sky to tell Arthur that she's sorry. So Arthur comes in just being like, hey, what happened to Yawara? She's like, she quit, she said she's sorry. And Arthur's like, oh, but she took her like magic things with her? Nah, she'll be back. I mean, probably. I don't know. I'm barely a part of this book. So at that point, Sky's like, oh, right. We totally left Aaron in the Ghostlands. We should go deal with that. So they go into the Ghostlands. Aaron's like, hey, I'm cool. I'm good. Thanks for the healing spirit. And then the healing spirit talks to Sky privately and is just like, hey, I did this as a courtesy, but just to let you know, do you have feelings for this boy? And she's like, maybe. He's like, right. Well, if you end up doing anything with that, you are going to have to renounce your claim to being like the spirit protector thing. Yeah, you're not going to have any of that left. So I'm not saying whether that's the right or wrong choice, just letting you know that's going to happen. And that's the book. I mean, I know eventually we're getting an Aquaman in the Others book because I'm literally holding the trade of it right now because that's the only place where this was published. But I don't know how this leads into the book as a whole. This kind of just feels like hey, everyone, the Aquaman and the Others book is taking a little bit longer than we expected. So here's just a thing to remind you that these characters exist and we will eventually get to them down the road. In terms of the rest of it, I mean, it's a fine enough issue. It does just feel like a reminder as to who the characters are. And then if Morgan Le Fay may be the main threat, okay, fair enough. Set it up here, good enough. But I don't know. It just kind of feels like a stopgap rather than a annual that actually means anything. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6.5. It's not a bad issue. It does feel like Aquaman, strangely enough, is the one who doesn't want to be there the most. He was just kind of like accidentally pulled into it. Because every time he's talking to any of the other characters, he's just like, I mean, I guess, sure, whatever. You guys do your thing. But beyond that, all the other characters are fine. But it's still not getting up to a 7. Swamp Thing Annual Number 2, written by Charles Soule, art by Javier, Pina, and Kano. So this is definitively still part of the story that's been going on. So last issue we had Swamp Thing being challenged by Jason Woodrue, who has become a character named Cedar, basically to become the avatar of the green. And the Parliament's like, yeah, you're going to go have a contest or something, and we'll deal back with that. So we open up with a burger. And some unknown narrators basically saying, like, humans do everything just to eat. That's it. Like, they work their entire lives to make money so that they can get food, and then they work some more. And that's just everything they do. They're trapped in their little cubicles, and they do that. It's craziness, because for plants, all you have to do is just go outside and look up. That's it. That's how you get fed. Can you imagine humanity if all you had to do to get food is just be outside? That's craziness. It's the good old days. And they said 3.5 billion years ago, that's the way it was. There were only plants. And then all of a sudden, a new life form emerged that developed the red animal life. And so seeing that these animal lives typically fed on plant life, the green took all of their power and they put it into a single being that would be part of the red, something more than just plant, but it would defend plant life exclusively. And so we see a picture of a trilobite being attacked by some primordial swamp thing. And it's like, yep, and that is the avatar. And then they say over the eons, there were plenty and plenty of them, and they always fit with whatever the time was. For instance, we have a Brontosaurus one, we have a caveman one, we have a samurai one. But no matter what, the avatars were always part of the red that was brought into the green. And when they died, they would become part of the green entirely, and that would be their reward. But what the life force behind it did not see coming was the greatest threat of all, which was intelligence. Something where it was purposely destroying the green, not out of this need to survive, but this need to thrive. And we see humanity and all that, and more and more avatars were sent. They were sent to stop, but intelligent creatures, man, were many. There were a bunch of them, and there was only one avatar. So because of that, the Parliament of Trees was created, and they were like, well, now hold on. What if we took the knowledge that all the avatars of the past have gathered, and we use that to basically make our current avatar all the more able to take on humanity? And thus, the Parliament of Trees was made. And they say no avatar holds the job forever. There's always other people. But what you need to remember is that the Parliament is not one. It is not a single entity. It is not a thought. It is the collection of past avatars, and they each have their own feelings on how to do things, how things should be. So there are dissenting voices in that. And we see that the person speaking to us, the person giving all this information, is called the Wolf. He himself was a past avatar. He's got kind of like a French 17th century aesthetic thing going on to him. And he's explaining all this to Alec Holland's Swamp Thing. And he's like, yeah, so what you need to remember is the Parliament is not all a single body. But also, even though the avatars, quote unquote, make the decision for when they're ready to retire, they don't. The Parliament decides that for them and then makes them think that they made the decision. So if you were truly wanted out by the entire Parliament, you would be out right now. Some people want you to succeed. I am one of those people. I want you to be able to succeed. But some of them think that Cedar, a more forceful avatar, is needed right now. And Alex like, okay, but like, I was told that I'm the best. I was told that I'm the greatest avatar that's ever lived. And Wolf's like, yeah, we tell all of you that. I was told that. Do you honestly think how many people would take the job if we said, yeah, you're all right? Like, yeah, we tell everyone that they're the best and that destiny has chosen them. But yeah, no, you are good. You fought against the rot. You did a fantastic job, but you're not the best. So you have that potential in you. And basically Alex saying like, I mean, but why Cedar though? He's he's horrible. He's an awful person. It's like, yeah. And he's willing to go that extra mile for the green. That's what some of the parliament wants. And it's going to grow if he's in charge. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. And at this point, Wolf explains, like, look, when you become the Avatar, the green speaks to you. I'm sure that's happened to you. And he's like, yeah, I've felt that before. And he says, well, yeah, that's, you and I are one and the same. I was also a botanist. Here's the thing. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to teach you the things you need to know so that you can become the best Avatar you possibly can. And he leads him out onto this boat. They take a river down. And he's more or less just asking, like, why should I even be worried? Woodroo is not a threat. I'm still a better Swamp Thing. It's just like, look, you need training. So I'm going to take you to somebody who can do it. And they make their way down this river. And they say that it's the Lady Weeds, who is, again, a previous Avatar. And Wolf is basically saying, like, look, buddy, you need to go in there. You need to listen to what she has to say. She's going to give you some good advice. But she's absolutely nuts. So I'm going to wait out here. Good luck to you. And so he goes inside. And he hears this woman, this voice talking to him from, like, all over. And his voice is saying, like, oh, it's you, the one who likes to die so much. And he's like, what do you mean likes to die? And he's like, well, I've seen you, all your fights against the Rotten so much. And you keep on coming right up to the verge of death. And then you come out of it. And you're all the worse for wear. There's no reason that you should be doing that, being an Avatar of the Green and all. Yet you still keep doing it. So I just assume you like to die. And he's just like, all right, well, screw this. Show me where you are and I'll beat you up. And so this little patch of weeds right behind him is like, I'm right here. I'm a dandelion. Go ahead. Rip me up. And so he leans down to talk to her. And she just launches an attack at Swamp Thing and uses her body to rip his body apart. And she's like, oh, geez, Alec, you're falling apart. How about you put yourself back together? Now she takes more of a humanoid form. And she basically says, none of your enemies are going to wait for you to put your body back together. I'm not going to wait either. So go ahead. Come on, do it. Be quick. And so he very quickly puts back together his humanoid form and he uses vines to entrap her. And she's like, oh no, vines, whatever will I do? And she just disappears into a pile of leaves and then reappears across the room. And she's just like, hey, I have exactly the same powers that you do. You can also do this, as she starts popping up all over the cave in multiple different bodies. And she explains, your mind is the only thing that's limiting you to that singular body. You are not a tree. You are blades of grass. You can appear anywhere in the green because you are the green. You just need to stop thinking of yourself as a person and more as the green. And he's like, I really like thinking of myself as a person, though. And she's like, well, who doesn't? Cedar. Cedar's definitely going to be blades of grass. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. And so he focuses hard, and he starts forming a alternate body across the way from him. But it takes a fully humanoid form. Like, it's just Alec Collins' body. And she's just like, oh my God, that is absolutely pathetic. Like, you are capable of so much more. And she chops off the body's head, and then we see her explaining slightly, like, who's got the power here and whether or not Cedar even stands a chance. And it's like, no, he's going to have just as much of a leg up that you do because he's got some ability of the green with him. He's able to do the same things that you can do, but he's willing to open himself up to doing these incredible things. And so she recounts from her tale that the Parliament has done this before, even during her time, where they're split and they think, well, we'll have our two potential avatars battle it out, and one of them will come out victorious. And we see that the other one that Weeds had to fight was this huge golem-like beast, and it swallowed her humanoid body whole, but then she just came up using all of the plant sea life that she could find and just crushed him hard down. And she's like, yeah, I beat him down. He was gone at that point. But I knew that the Parliament would keep on trying if they didn't think I was the strongest there was. So what I did was, my rival, he was from Ireland. In order to really add insult to injury, I made a tiny tweak to the green in order to make potatoes slightly more susceptible to fungus, and thus started the Great Irish Potato Famine. And Alec is like, you did that just to spite this guy? And it's just like, yeah. And it worked. They didn't ever try to challenge me again. And he's like, but you killed millions of people. And it's just like, so? They're part of the red. They're not part of the green. That's not your problem. You need to focus. You are not a person. You are the avatar of the green. And she basically says, no matter what, you're staying here. This is my domain. You're not leaving this place until I think that you're good enough to leave. Whether that be a day or an eternity, you're staying here. So he sits down and he's like, all right, fine. And he starts meditating, and some huge amount of time passes. We see he's completely overgrown, and then he comes out and he's like, all right, I'm ready. And she's like, what, you're going to try to escape again? He's like, no, I don't need to escape. And a hand comes down from the roof and squashes Lady Weeds, and we see that Alec has merged his consciousness with all of the plant life inside of her cave. And she's like, all right, good job, you did it. You've managed to accept that you're everywhere. Have fun. So he heads back out on the boat, and we see that Wolf is now sending in some horses, pigs, and cows, like from the red, in on a boat. And he's like, those creatures are from the red. A, where did you get them? B, why are you sending them into Lady Weave's cave? And it's like, well, B, this is her payment. She wasn't doing that, helping you for free. So I'm giving her pieces of the red because that's something that interests her. And A, they were extremely expensive, so you're welcome. And then as they're leaving on the boat, they pass by Cedar, who has his own person who's training him, entering into the cave. And they are carrying in tow an elephant. And Wolf is like, damn, she's really going to like that elephant. Oh, man, that's unfair. So at that point, Wolf says, there's one more person I need to send you to. He is the greatest champion of the green. He is someone who you need to learn everything you can from, because he is number one for sure. And we see he enters like this blue area. Everything's blue. And as he walks his way in, he arrives in his hometown of Houma, Louisiana. And as he walks in, everyone is like a slave, more or less. There are like people there, but they're all part of the illusion. And they say, welcome, Alec Holland. And we see that the Swamp Thing that is this champion was the Swamp Thing that preceded Alec. It was the Swamp Thing that was just plant life that was made to believe that it was Alec Holland. And it was the Parliament that made this as like a fake champion because they couldn't get Alec's body back in time. So at that point, Swamp Thing starts freaking out. He starts throwing punches. He's like, this is stupid. You are just me. How could you be the greatest champion? You stole my life. You stole everything I was supposed to be. And he starts fighting him. He's like, if you had been better, then you would have still been the Avatar. I wouldn't have to have been here. And he starts tearing apart the whole town before he finally collapses. And he's like, you managed to be yourself the whole time. You didn't have to give up this ideal of you being human when you were the Avatar. I can't give that up. I can't just separate myself from the red. What do I do? How am I supposed to be this? And the old Swamp Thing basically says, if you're ever asked something that you don't want to do, that it's something that's going to corrupt you to the core, just say no. You're the one in charge of your own destiny here. So he makes his way back out to Wolf, and Wolf's like, well, I hope you understand everything you need to do. You need to, be him, because he was the best that you could be. He is your like maximum capability here of being an Avatar of the Green, because he was the Green incarnate. So you just have to do things his way, all right? And Swamp Thing pauses for a moment, and he just goes, no. And that's it. That's the issue. And I gotta say, I love this final panel. It's so memeable. I really want to use it, but it's great. Yeah, sorry, real long on that one, but it is in depth, and it really goes into how Charles Soule is viewing the philosophy of what the green means, and he's really diving into these deeper aspects of it. And I'm really enjoying that. I think it's a great introspective look, because that's kind of what I've always been interested with Swamp Thing, is not so much of, oh, how hard can he punch with plants? It's always been this tear between the fact of he is human, but also representing all plant life, and how do you square that? So yeah, it's been great the whole way through, and this annual is no exception. I'm going to say this one is probably... I'm going to give it a 9. I really enjoyed it. From the opening sequence to the way that Lady Weeds handled things to that last bit with the fake Swamp Thing, all of it was great. I have no problems with it. So yeah, 9 overall. I'm really enjoying this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the battle with Cedar ends up going. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this October 30th, 2013. But we're not done yet because it is a 5th week, and there usually are backup comics, backup stories for me to talk about. But in the vein of everything else going on this week, I made a little mistake. So I thought there would be more, I guess. There's been backup stories throughout Batman. There's been backup stories throughout Detective Comics, Action Comics, All-Star Western, and they have been consistent. They have been constantly been going on for like months now. But as it turns out, because of Villains Month going on and whatever the hell the reason was for this past month here, there haven't been. There has been not a lot. Now, there would have been, but the last 5th week I actually decided to skip ahead and cover most of them because it finished up the storyline nicer. But for some godforsaken reason, I didn't do Detective Comics number, I think it was 90, well, no, it would have been from episode 101, I believe. Whatever comic that was. I think 23. Yes. So, from Detective Comics 23, I didn't do that one. And I should have, because it actually had the storyline wrapped up in the Man-Bat Villains Month thing, so it's just been a dangling plot thread this whole time that already got spoiled. But regardless, I'm doing it now. And that is the only backup comic that has been published in the past 2 months that I haven't already talked about. So, here we go! Marital Abyss, written by John Layman, art by Andy Clarke. This is from Detective Comics number 23, and it is the end of the Man-Bat story that has been going on in the Detective Comics story. So, last time we had the realization that Kirk Langstrom was Man-Bat, and he was maybe killing people whenever he transforms, but he realized, no, wait, it's actually my wife. So here we get the backstory on that from the wife's perspective, where she says, I first told Kirk about how, I was all in. I was 100% in on his plan, and I married him, and I said till death do us part, and now I'm saying goodbye as they battle as She-Bat against Man-Bat. And then we start getting flashbacks to them in the lab, and she was always the supportive wife. She was always, whenever he needed to stay late and study stuff, she was like, yep, nope, all good. I'll stay home and I'll do whatever you need. You just write everything down no matter what. And we see that she was actually an employee of Caldwell, weapons, I guess would be the full thing, the Caldwell Technologies. And she was sent to basically be a spy on Kirk Langstrom, to the point of infiltrating his personal life and being his wife, going all the way in there. So she fully did that. She was a great assistant. She did everything she needed to do. And she was, honest in some extent that she was wanting to help people to whatever extent. But in the end, she knew she would be taking this formula and using it for super soldier stuff that, as we've already seen, was in Batman Incorporated and whatnot, a bunch of flying bats. So then one day, obviously, the serum got loose. It was set loose on Gotham. A bunch of people started turning, and even she could not expect the idea that Kirk would use the serum on himself to save all those people. So she was like, all right, all this has gone to hell. The serum's been compromised. I need to take the notes and run. So she took all of his notes, incomplete, mind you. She completed them as she saw fit, and she took her own serum because, hey, she's already two-faced. Why not go against Caldwell as well? So she became She-Bat, and she had just this bloodthirsty urge that she was 100% addicted to, and she was constantly doing that. And then we see the confrontation where Kirk comes up and says, hey, you used the wrong bat. And she's like, hey, what are you doing here? And she says, look, I know you took my serum. I know you've been transforming into she-bat. It's addictive and it's making you kill people. But that's because you used this blood-sucking bat that is extremely aggressive rather than something, not that. And she's like, well, all right, fair enough. And he's like, look, I can help you. We can find a way to beat the addiction. We can make this work. It's not too late. You can be yourself again. And she's like, oh, you don't understand. I've had to be someone else for so long now. This is me being myself. And she takes the serum and starts transforming. Then she throws Clarke around the room, to which point he transforms. And he's just like, all right, let's do this then. They start fighting each other. And she basically gets the upper hand on him. She's about to slash his throat, but she realizes that over the course of her job, she has actually grown to care about him to some extent. So she doesn't finish it. She just flies out the window. Clarke de-transforms, and she says, thanks to Kirk Langstrom, I'm who I am today, but it's thanks to me that I'm something else. I'm free, as she flies over Gotham City. And then it'll all be concluded in the Man-Bat one-shot for Villains Month. So yeah. That's all that. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's very well drawn. I think the writing is good. I do think that once you do the reveal that it was the wife last issue, or last backup story, I should say, it's kind of obvious how he got there. The only thing that was a little up in the air as to whether or not, who was the person that was hiring her? The fact it was Caldwell, yeah, no one could have guessed that. It could have been any company, but the whole idea that she was there as a spy kind of seems like it was obvious from that point. Overall, I'd say this backup story is good. I'd give it a solid 7. It's weird how much interest Man-Bat is given. The fact he's given a full backup story to explore this tragic thing of, oh no, his wife was transformed and he's lost her and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's probably a solid 7, but Man-Bat, who would have thought? And that, unsurprisingly, is it. Like I said, I just have the one backup story. That's been hanging over my head for 2 months now. So happy I got it out of the way. Anyway, I don't really have much more to say. The only other thing I wanted to get out there is Happy Halloween. It is tomorrow as of the posting of this episode, or if you are trying to sound pretentious, All Hallows Eve. So yeah, that's probably my favorite holiday, and I am too old to really do anything fun with it. Also too lazy. But I'm going to play it off as the too old thing. So yeah, next week's comics. Let's go ahead and just jump right on into that. Next week, we have Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Batman/Superman, Superman Unchained, Green Lantern, Earth 2, Green Arrow, The Movement, Stormwatch, The Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and of course the event comic continues with Forever Evil. Out of those, the only ones I really need to draw attention to are Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, and Green Arrow, because those are all part of the 0-year thing, which to my understanding is, hey, how did all these characters first meet Batman? Which is going to be weird in Detective Comics, considering that is just more Batman, but I'm sure they have a plan that's not going to be clones. I'm so sick of clones. Please, no more clones. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you tuned in. If you have any comments that you would like to share about the comics I've read this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up on Reddit, on Discord, on Patreon. All the links are either on screen or in the description of however it is you are listening/watching this podcast. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Really means the world to me that you're here. Jake. At least one of you's freaked out right now. Yeah, anyway. Be sure to tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And as always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.